Oh, good morning. Welcome to the BORDERPOL Journal for the 24th of February, 2024. This is episode 6, season 3. We're broadcasting from the sunny shores of Grand Bend, Ontario, Canada. It's a beautiful spring-like day, although the temperature is rather cool. You can see that we've got some shelf ice out there, but no snow. And we're looking for some pretty good weather coming up in the week. We'll be joined by my co-host, Bob Dunlop, out on the West Coast in Vancouver. And today's show will follow shortly. There you go.
There we go. And here we are, the last Saturday of the second month of the year 2024.
Leap year.
I'm glad, otherwise we wouldn't be having this on this Saturday. And yeah,
That's right. And I think leap years bring weird stuff to the surface.
No, I think I'd respectfully disagree. I think just every year brings weird stuff.
Listen, there's things this morning I got up, because we had our pre-production yesterday, right? And we had all these great things we went through the open source Intel nets to, see what's weighty that we could chat about today for our readers and viewers and listeners. And lo and behold, overnight, more weird stuff shows up. And I'm telling you, I was going, it's like a fire hose. We can do all the pre-production we want, but 24 hours later, all the goofy stuff that you read earlier is overwhelmed by more goofy stuff.
It's out goofied.
It's out goofied. There you go. So one that is in these perilous times, as we have been told by so many because of the stuff that's going on in different parts of the world. This morning, I'm going through the usual sort of news reports, and one that pops up is about Canada has no gold. I mean, none, zero, nada. Okay. So I'm thinking, what is this all about? So I look at the actual article, and it says, brought up by the World Bank, central banks, every September put out a list of the countries with the top 10 gold reserves. Okay. So as of September 2023, all right, guess which country has the most gold locked up?
Well, you would like to think that it would be your own country, but we already know we're at nothing. So I would hazard a guess and say that one of our great boogeymen would be the biggest one, and that would be the Soviet Union.
Well, there's no Soviet Union, but what is left of it, the Russian Federation has 2,333 tons of gold. But to answer the question, who has the most gold? Who ironically has the largest debt of any country in the world is the United States.
Wow.
The United States has 8,133 tons of gold. locked up by and large in the Federal Reserve in Fort Knox.
Wow.
Okay. Despite the fact that some of these countries don't think there is a relevance to the gold standard, they curiously have one hell of a lot of it locked up. And so you have 1/5 of all the gold ever mined in all time held by central banks. Okay. And so you have the US way out in front with over 8,000 tons, 8,000 tons of the stuff. Then you have Germany, the country that lost the war and all that stuff. It's got number 2 position at 3,353
Wow.
tons, followed by Italy, 2,400, France, 2,400, Russia, 2,000 earlier, 2,333. China, growing gold reserves among other developed economies, says 2,192 tons. And then you can slide all the way down to number 11 or so, which is Turkey at 479 tons. But essentially, most of the European countries hold all the gold, with the exceptions of India and Japan, with 800 tons of each of them. Curious, huh? And the largest increase in the last quarter that was recorded to September came from China, Poland, Turkey, and Uzbekistan and the Czech Republic. I don't know about you, but I see a trend here.
Well, it brings back a question to me. When we did a trip across Canada several years ago now, we stopped off at the Mint in Winnipeg. And we actually got to go in the Winnipeg Mint and tour around and look at all of their stuff. And under a geodesic dome, locked on a huge chain, was a pound of gold. I wonder if we sold that one off.
Well, it says that there's zero, nada, gold. So I don't know when the Mint, strikes gold coins, or they buy it from the States.
Probably.
I mean,
maybe we have zero because we have less than a ton. I don't know.
Well, according to our pals over at OSINT, the Canadian government sold off all its gold reserves in the 60s. And by 2023, there was zero gold in reserve. Okay, nada.
Well, I don't want to say that we'd be that silly, but maybe it's only because we have less than a ton, and that's why we're showing a zero, because if you have less than a ton, it doesn't count.
Well, listen to the argument that was the rationale. It says Canada sold off its gold bullion because it was too costly to store. So that's a simple answer. So I don't know what what that means in terms of why doesn't Canada have no gold to back up its currency or anything else, but Canada doesn't feel that gold is worth anything. I don't.
Well,
and we're pissing away money all over the place on stuff that apparently is paid for with money that is borrowed from banks, other banks. So we borrow money to give money away, to people abroad.
I think I've mentioned that before, and when we were growing up as kids, $1 million was a lot. Like, if you won the lotto, and I remember when Lotto Canada came out way back, it was the big prize of $1 million. Millions has become so commonplace that we're now comfortable with billions. And you see the jokes every now that come around on email, and to put billion into perspective, a billion seconds ago was 0 BC, right? I mean, it's just that long ago. But the thing that's more troubling about that is that we're now starting to get comfortable with looking at trillions.
Yes.
And we have no concept of money. I mean, we just had our leader here in this country going across the province giving out billions of dollars for housing, that obviously money we don't have because we've got nothing to back it up with. And we've got a premier here that has decided that, well, it's an election year, so we're cutting nothing and we're going to double our debt into the billions of dollars. And somebody had put out the other day that, the amount of money that has gone out from not only our country, but the United States is probably billions of dollars that have gone out somewhere. And we seem to be very, very focused on helping other people, but not our own. And I don't know, that's wrong. It gets down, I guess, to money that's going out to make us look good, make us want to feel like we're doing something right. I don't know what it is, but it would sure seem to me that some of the money that we're spending abroad at like drunken sailors is pardon me if I've offended any drunken sailors, but the there's money that we should be spending here at home that could be going to better things, like helping the military out here.
Or helping the military. We're giving away money and equipment to the Ukrainians. Drones, which apparently I didn't even know that the Canadian military had 200 something drones. They're being shipped off to the Ukrainians because that seems to be a good place to spend our assets.
But I guess it gets to the same standard as gold. It's too expensive to store them here, so we'll let somebody else store them for us.
Well, yeah, and maybe they're so poor that they'll buy some better ones later on and let the Ukrainians take the garbage and get killed in the process. I mean, I'm sorry to be so cynical, but this morning again, you don't have to wait around very long to have something coincide with the discussion that we have once a week. It turns out that according to the Washington Post, this is today. They have Americans talking about how the war in Ukraine is all about finding out how the Russians can fight a war. This happens while the Ukrainians are getting slaughtered on the battlefield, and they are fielding just enough equipment and support to the Ukrainians to keep kind of a stalemate going. But they really are more interested, as the quote from the Washington Post is, and I quote, "The war remains an active and bountiful research opportunity for American military planners as they look to the future," the official said, according to the Post. A senior defense official explained, "We immersed them in this conflict to make sure that there was understanding of the implications for warfare." And the second official told the outlet that the war in Ukraine is an enduring resource. Okay. So this is what we're providing money for. You know, the whole Ukrainian thing now is really starting to smell very weird. In fact, the fellow who is in charge of Canada is in Kiev as we speak. How another secret trip, to buttress the leadership there, and give away under 60 million. Never mind the drones. No one's ever asked anybody in this country, are we in favor of this? And I look at some of these foolish nonsense coming out on social media, where I can't believe there are so many people who are taken in by this thing. And when you ask them the question, are you prepared to be involved in a nuclear war? They go, oh, that's not going to happen. They wouldn't do that. Are you serious? Did they know that this country is in NORAD? Did they know that our northern neighbor happens to be Russia? if they're going to get into a protracted situation with NATO, aka the USA, guess where the stuff flies over? And these dimwits on the internet, oh no, that's got nothing to do with us. They either have no maps in their house, or they've never gone to school, or
Both.
combination of both.
Yeah. Well,
But
and
anyway,
again, you can't fix stupid. There's no question about that. But and I see also too that our illustrious leader, who is one of the great espousers of global warming, climate change, whatever you have, is now off to Kiev to sign a $3 billion security deal. Again, money we obviously don't have. How much carbon is going into the air to do this? Couldn't he have just done something like that over a Skype meeting or a Zoom session?
Why are we giving 3 billion to begin with? Three
Well,
each is
I don't
three
know.
billion. I mean, come on, this is getting insane. We've got people living on the streets of the major cities of the country. Okay.
But I guess the
Uh,
issue there is I don't know, is it I, migration? How's all this stuff going to affect migration? Getting back to something that we're kind of interested in here.
well,
What could
yeah,
$3 billion do to our programs here in Canada to bring people here to help settle people it just, even if we don't have anything to back it up with, surely to goodness that money could be better spent on things that matter to us as a country. Not that
yeah,
perhaps
but
the Ukraine doesn't, or that Russia doesn't, or the UK doesn't. But I forget which president it was. The buck stops here. Charity begins at home. It's there's a lot of isms out there that we should be looking at, and I keep on wondering. Yeah, and we were out for a walk yesterday, and clear the head. It was a beautiful day, sunshiny, wonderful climate, and we started talking about, my wife and I. It sure seems to be that we've become very angry. You can't talk about anything, as we're doing right now, without becoming angry. And it seems to be that the fuse to that is so short. It's almost an instantaneous ignition and explosions. Was it because of COVID? Because we had so much time to sit around and think about these things? Or is this just the new norm, the new nature? I don't know. But even yesterday, we kind of joked pre-production that we'd like to do a real heads up sunny kind of show one day, and you get sucked into this doom and gloom stuff almost like that. And
well, you remember last week, we had Andrea on talking about the Great Squash Mystery, which, by the way, had a lot of interest shown on various platforms because it was, it was a field level discussion. Someone goes to grocery stores and finds out, as did you, that we're paying $8 for a squash. So this may be trivial in the greater scheme of things, very trivial, but it shows what the problem here is. That we're being our sights are focused on something 8,000 miles away, right? Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Left hand waving, the right hand is scratching around somewhere else. Exactly. So this is true. But I the things that get to me in the sphere of that discussion is, how did we get so dumbed down, and how did we allow so many dumbed down people over the last decade or so, or perhaps one generation, to occupy positions of power in leadership and policy making? And we've got a number of countries to look at where we can actually listen to court cases or committee hearings in legislatures, And they bring up these folks who are supposedly the directors or the deputy ministers or the ministers or the secretaries or the judges or whatever, and you ask them pretty basic questions, and they're as dumb as a bag of rocks. And you go, like, how did this person, float to the top like this? Because they are so dim-witted or
I
so
think,
ideologically rooted in whatever their answers are. You go, this can't possibly be true. And these are the same people that will sit around and say the sky is green. If you don't believe this, you're a racist, misogynist, or you're some kind of, you
nist,
know,
a nist.
a nist, right?
Mm.
And so, it's almost cookie cutter when you look at the level of stupidity. I mean, I can't even think of another a word that is and and it's a dangerous stupidity
Yeah, well,
because
yeah,
these are people who don't know history.
yeah, yeah.
They're narcissists. I mean, I can go, you know what I'm saying. And but how did we get here, and why are we listening to these people, and why are we the great
Yeah.
the plebes of the world putting up with this jazz? Because it's not
I
just in
think
this country. It
no,
seems to
it's not.
be
Yeah.
a disease in the Western world where we've the drive to the bottom for excellence has been clear, and the rise to the top of stupid, dim-witted, narcissists, greedy, corrupt, unethical nincompoops, they outnumber the folks that you'd say, hey, they have empathy for my problem. I don't see any of these leaders have any empathy for the issues of the people they supposedly are leading. They talk down to you continually, and if you
But
question it,
that's
then the
true.
next thing
Yeah.
you say, people like us, I guarantee you, they're saying these two guys, we got to deal with them because they're thinking outside the box, and we don't like that. We're going to put them right back in the box. You'd be, to use the science fiction and Star Trek thing. You're going to be part of the Borg. If you don't like it, we cut you off. Sorry to go off on that little rant, but
But it's you're right, and it started long, long time ago. Yeah, when I worked in the illustrious civil service, the people that seemed to get ahead were the people that wanted to get ahead. I remember going to one meeting and saying that one of the deputy ministers up there, we're looking for the best and the brightest.
oh god, I hate that.
And I couldn't help but think at that time that the best and the brightest don't want your job. And they are the one, and in essence, it's like now, because we didn't want to be that best and the brightest, or we didn't want to get our hands dirty, or we didn't like the process. Rather than changing from within, we just sat back and started to complain from without. And I think that's what's happening here a bit now is that we're letting people who obviously have not got the interest of the general public in mind, but their own private interests, uh, seem to be leading us off willy-nilly to go somewhere else on something that matters to them. And again, you're right. I just looked down here in the flyby news. We had an asylum seeker from Kenya die after spending a night in a Mississauga shelter lobby. Not to mention how many people do we have non-asylum seekers here in Canada that die every night because of starvation or drug overdose or whatever it happens to be. But we have our leader going over spending $3 billion on a security package to another country,
Yeah,
where
well,
obviously there are people that are dying, but for a different reason.
Well, curiously, the Canadian media is very, very hostile to anyone who questions this business of why are there so many migrants in the country who are basic here without permission. Okay, guy, let's not talk about illegal or undocumented. They're not even supposed to be here. Okay, they're here without permission to be here. That's
Mhm.
how it. Okay, and the CBC, that bastion of free thinking, has a program on Sundays where they talk about the news of the week and so on, and they're going on about how we need more people in the country. Don't know where to house them, don't know where to feed them, don't know where to put them in a school, their kids in schools, but that's not irrelevant. These people are ideologues and they keep going on and on about this. But if you question what drives this, they clam up because they're paid off ideologues. I'm sorry, and I picked the CBC, which is really kind of a easy target because it is the state broadcaster. So they're whatever is dreamt up into tiny pointed heads in the bog of Ottawa of the government comes out in the CBC. So that's just too simple. But let's face it. This is a Western problem in terms of let's just take the G7 and the EU. The whole business of having migration waves sweep over the continent of Europe or North America is curiously the same. Okay, and the same impacts of these literally millions of people who come from the four corners of the world. The impact is the same. You have a wave of crime that's committed by them because let's face it, they're not meeting their expectations by getting there, which are a nice life with a chateau in the country. That's not that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You've got attacks of police in New York and Manhattan, and the four attackers of the cops are given money to fly to California because you don't want to see them in court. The uncomfortable reality is that you've got millions of people from the third world on the streets of Western countries who have deep connections to street gangs, are known for drug smuggling, human trafficking, all kinds of crime. Okay, and places like New York, you've seen a 15-year-old undocumented, they call, charged with shooting a Brazilian tourist in the leg in Times Square. And in fact, I got the thing in front of me here now. It says this is from the Tass project in the States. This is a 15-year-old immigrant. Of course, they call him an immigrant. But we're talking about, and they even named the fellow, but I'm not going to go with it. Suspected of shooting a tourist and firing at a police officer during a failed robbery in Times Square, is arrested by U.S. Marshals under the Joint Regional Fugitive Task Force. Oh, by the way, he's also suspect in armed robbery in the Bronx. Then the marshals get him, and on video on X and on other social media, Buddy starts crying. He's detained his legal team for shooting a tourist. And oh my God, he's a young kid. So the whole narrative by the bots, which are probably the same money being spent on him by ideologues who like this stuff. Oh my goodness, you look what this poor child. Now he's a child. He's killed somebody. Somebody is an armed robber, and now we have issues of he's just a child. I mean, come on. And New York is falling apart. It used to be a major tourist attraction in the world. Who the heck wants to go to New York?
Well, there's a lot of places and we were thinking the other day about where would we like to go for a holiday? Because if you don't have something to plan to look forward to, things can get pretty dull and gloomy. But you kind of really there's turmoil in Germany. There's the Olympics coming up in France. There's all kinds of things that are going on, and it really limits where you want to go and spend your money. Maybe we should be doing a tour at home. Maybe we should be not planning a holiday. Maybe we should putting some of that money into some of the aid societies to help the homeless here. I don't know. It sure is easy to light that fuse and ignite it and make people angry, but I don't know what's going to fix that.
Well, I'm going to tell you that another bit of news this morning, which is probably indicative of what we're talking about, how dummies are involved in making stuff, whether it's policy or whatever. Did you know that the moon lander the Americans sent day before yesterday, to land on the south pole of the moon, tipped over on touchdown? sending shares of Intuitive Machines crashing on Friday. The investors who experienced more volatility than crypto traders found that the moon lander basically cost them a pile of money because when it landed, it tipped over. Thank you very much. First lunar
Well,
lander in a half a century gets there and then falls over.
yeah, it goes back
Doesn't
to
that tell you something?
well, it does. Yeah, I think to me, what it tells me is we've become too reliant on technology.
True.
Because I remember exactly what transpired in 1969. It was the fact that Neil Armstrong took over the lunar lander and guided the lander down because where the computer models had generated, there were too many rocks in it. It would have tipped over.
Yeah. Well, the thing is they couldn't hide this one because it's on. People are watching. Everyone's clapping and cheering, and it's like a Monty Python thing. The thing lands and falls over on its side. Oops, sorry. Uh, it's insane. Like I say, we don't pre-production 24 hours later completely throws our whole program out the door. Because I wanted to, one of the things I want to talk about is we were talking about it's freedom of speech issue that seems to also be dogging us these days because our illustrious leader here and in other countries is working really hard to ensure that if you don't comply with the Borg, we'll shut you down. And one of the things that I've been looking at or looked at yesterday, and we're going to talk about was, how is it possible that even the corporate group is now involved in this night? And I referred to the CBS reporter who was fired by CBS for not, I guess, abiding by the corporation's links with the Democrat Party, basically. Okay, we're talking about the woman who was Catherine Herridge. She used to work at Fox News and she's an intelligence reporter. She's really done some great work over the years. I mean, I've watched her stuff, and she's got some really deep contacts in the swamp and other places when it comes to unearthing what's really going on. And in fact, she was pursuing a story that was unwelcome by Biden's group and the Democrats because it was all about Joe Biden's diminished mental capacity, and people have reported on the Biden corruption scandal and so on. Because that if had she been doing this about Trump, she'd still be employed, but she did this on Biden. And what they did was when they fired her, they also seized her laptop and all her files and what have you. Now, this is really, I think, concerning stuff because what happens, in particular in the U.S., this could be a First Amendment issue, whereas the employer has no business taking her private laptop, which has it's her ownership, and all her files, which she has for obviously the links to various whistleblowers and so on. But you can see that the deep state, as they like to call it, or in Canada, I call it the bog, the bog on the Rideau. Where you've got people who have all sorts of lumpy carpets that they don't want people to lift the corners on. And the quick way to do this is you get into situations like hers where you fire her, or if you're a trucker 2 years ago, your bank account disappears. We're living in some very weird times here. Uh, this is not the Canada or the America that I grew up in, or
Sure.
or the shining light on the hill. Well, this is a flickering candle.
Well, you're right. And again, it goes back. It doesn't take much once that match reaches that fuse to set things ablaze.
Hey,
And
listen, you said it a couple of weeks ago that there's a bunch of kids here in the dynamite factory playing with matches, and they're dim-witted numbskulls to boot. You know, and they have no fear of anything. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that's going on, and they're absolutely fearless. They could care less. They can lie in your face. Doesn't matter. And if we question that, whether we're right or wrong from our sources, you're shut down.
Mhm.
I was watching a report the other day, but by the guy who created Rumble, which is where one of our platforms where we post the very thing people are watching right now. So we have Rumble and YouTube, and Rumble is located in Canada, or is a Canadian company, but obviously has most of its subscribers and viewers outside of Canada. And he was very concerned that these institutions are under threat,
Mhm.
because the powers that be aren't going to like people like us saying, "Excuse me, but it's not exactly how things are going on at street level."
Well, that goes back to the fable, right?
You
That
got you got a
does
minute and 28 to tell me.
that's is the emperor really wearing clothes, or do we want to think that the emperor is really wearing clothes?
When I think
We
of
have to.
our emperor, I don't know, want to see him naked.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to see
We
anybody that way. But well, we shouldn't say that. Anyway, we have to take this into account, and we've got to stop playing with matches, and we've got to start looking for some good things. We've got to find that beacon of light somewhere that's out there. It's got to be there. I'm sure it is, but maybe that's our choice for this weekend, is to really, really, really try to find something positive to talk about with human migration and mobility and et cetera, et cetera. But we're under a minute.
I know,
Please like us, please subscribe, tell your friends. If you want to join us, go to our organization website, borderpol.org.
indeed. And we'll
Mhm.
see you next week.
I hope
Leap
so.
year next week.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. Take care,
Take
Bob.
care. Bye bye.